George Galloway, and the mother of all talk shows. Welcome to the Open University of the Airwaves with George Galloway.
President Biden is not suffering from Alzheimer's or dementia, says a reassuring statement from the White House. But a Beltway insider with millions of followers has just let it be known that he expects Biden to resign as the presidential candidate in November. The ball is on the slates, as we say in Glasgow. And Macron is French toast from this weekend. But who will be the next Prime Minister of France? My mate, Jean-Luc Mélenchon, or the right-wing nationalist Marine Le Pen? And in the British general election, Labour has moved into a frenzy of lying and deceiving. Lying about me to such an extent that my campaign manager and I have this evening begun legal proceedings against the Labour Party, against their councillor Altab Ali, and against Rochdale Borough Council. Dalat Ali, I should say, for the avoidance of doubt. And Keir Starmer is the official nominee of the Sun newspaper. The Sun, set in Liverpool many years ago when they lied about the people who were killed by incompetence and then lied about by the police and many others, especially the Sun. The Sun backs Starmer. He said he'd never write for the Sun before he did write for the Sun. He said he wouldn't court the Sun until he did court the Sun. And today he expressed himself as absolutely delighted to be the official candidate of Rupert Murdoch's dirty little rag that hardly anyone reads anymore. I don't know why Starmer bothered. He doesn't look like a man heading for a landslide majority to me, does he? To you? Is that a trail of slime behind him? Or is it Palestinian blood from the children of Gaza? Trust me, this is going to be a bumper night, so fasten your seatbelt. Live from Rochdale, it is the mother of all talk shows.
Curious about our curriculum? Have something to say? Then call us now to join the debate on the mother of all talk shows. The only education you can get for free. George Galloway, the mother of all talk shows. With George Galloway, the world is our classroom, and you're welcome to sit in and join the seminar.
Fresh, if that's the word, from a weekend retreat at Camp David with his trusted advisor, Hunter Biden, Joe Biden came back fighting, and all the liberal commentators were forced to eat the words they had spoken on television after his disastrous showing in Atlanta after the presidential debate. They all said how shocked they were, like the police captain in Rick's Cafe in Casablanca, who was shocked to find that there was illegal gambling going on in the casino, complete with roulette wheels, card tables, and the rest. That police chief was shocked, he said. Well, all these liberal commentators that had been calling all these videos about Joe Biden's mental state as deep fakes were left then to confront the reality seen by hundreds of millions of people around the world, which showed that a drooling, driveling imbecile was in charge of the United States of America and its hypersonic, intercontinental, ballistic, nuclear missile fleet. And all over Europe, people were asking their own governments, you're asking us to go into World War III after that imbecile Biden? So they all panicked, you see, until they realized that actually there is no way to remove Joe Biden from the ballot as the Democratic Party's choice for president. 4 more years. Take a look at him. Joe Biden Who looks at him and says what he needs is another 4 years as President of the United States? So they began to panic because they discovered that if not Biden, it's Kamala Harris, laughing gas Harris, where we can be unburdened by where we have been. They realized that Kamala Harris is even more unelectable than Joe Biden, so they began to backtrack and claim it was just a bad night. He was just tired. It was the cold. That's why they took him to an eating house right after the debate and allowed him to infect a lot of unsuspecting people. It was just a cold. He'll be better next time. Except he's now going to resign next week, according to the hottest Beltway pundits who are this evening going into overdrive. How do you get rid of Biden without having to have Kamala Harris? What if Kamala Harris will not step down? And I suspect that she will not. Big Mike Obama is already fundraising for her. Kamala, not Big Mike. She's already fundraising for her. And she's going in and out of the portals of big money black people, for starters. But they're finding it a very difficult job to raise money for a Kamala Harris presidential bid. In any case, they've already given to Joe Biden. You want them to give again for Kamala? So how do they get rid of Kamala? How do they shoehorn somebody even remotely electable? I don't know, Hillary Clinton perhaps. It is a thoroughgoing coach and horses through the Democratic Party in the United States. It is an omni-shambles. It is a cluster, you know what. And laughing all the way to the polls is big Donald Trump, Zion Don, the big orange man, who has sold his soul and maybe other parts of his anatomy to the Zionist lobby in exchange for a £125 million donation from one of the biggest Zionist funders in America. Trump is ready to let Israel finish the job and will give them the wherewithal to do so. So Biden, who did all that for Netanyahu and the genocide, is being knifed in the back by the people he sacrificed, a very considerable part of the Democratic Party's voting base, in order to appease. So the American election is a few months away, but it is getting red hot. Stand by for more details in the course of the show. In France, Macron is already French toast. He got 20% of the vote in the first round of the parliamentary elections that he himself called needlessly in the aftermath of the spanking he got from Marine Le Pen in the European Parliament elections just a few weeks ago. He enjoys a spanking, does Macron, and boy did he get one. And he's going to get another one at this weekend's second round runoff elections. State of play is this: the right-wing French nationalist Marine Le Pen is on 34%. My friend, my equivalent in France, Jean-Luc Mélenchon, and his new Popular Front of left-wing forces is on 28.5%, and Macron is on 20%. So the top two candidates in every constituency will run off against each other. And so, as Macron is not in the top two in almost every constituency in the country, his voters are going to have to decide, do they back the left or do they back the right? It'll be a very interesting story indeed. And we will cover it, of course, in depth on Sunday in the mothership, the Sunday edition of the mother of all talk shows. But let me turn to the British general election, which has reached fever pitch. Well, fever pitch amongst the 50 to 60% of the people who will vote in the parliamentary election, because nothing has excited them so far. How could it? The two main protagonists, so wooden the birds are trying to nest in one of them, and the other looking like a shoeshine boy at Paddington Station from the bowels of a Conservative Party which has not elected a leader for some considerable time. The last one they elected was Boris Johnson. One after the other, they stabbed themselves, stabbed each other in the back, got rid of them in a coup, and had an unelected leader take the office of Prime Minister. I've lost count of the number of foreign secretaries, defence secretaries, chancellors of the Exchequer that we have had. Suffice to say, it all looks like Italy in the 1960s and 70s. Stability used to be Britain's middle name, no longer. The shoeshine boy is out. He's going to ply his trade, lucrative one. In California, he's got a green card in his pocket already. His wife is a non-dom resident in the United States for tax purposes, you understand. And he is off ski. That will leave the Tories with their utterly depleted number of members of Parliament after tomorrow to decide whether they become the nice or the nasty party. The numbers will matter. If Penny Mordaunt were to hold her seat in Portsmouth, and she's in very real danger of losing it, they'll probably choose her and go nice to differentiate themselves from the Reform Party, to which I shall turn in just a minute or two. But if she loses her seat, they'll decide to go nasty. Nasty means Cruella Braverman. It means Kemi Badenoch. Two black women, but that's the only good thing you could say about them. They are red in tooth and claw. They make Liz Truss look like a liberal, and they will be the new face of the Tory party. In which case, nothing will differentiate the Tories from Nigel Farage and the Reform Party. In which case, why not merge the two of them together? Why not have a takeover or a reverse takeover? Why doesn't the Reform Party take over the Tory party? Tory party might seek to take over the Reform Party. Maybe make Nigel Farage the Deputy Prime Minister. Who knows? The Deputy Shadow Prime Minister, of course, I mean. Why not, in that case, change their name altogether to the Reform Conservative Party or the Conservative Reform Party? All of these things are on the table in the aftermath of what is expected to be a significant, but not landslide majority for the Labour leader, Keir Starmer, to whom I now turn. This man is not just the most charmless, the most dishonest, the most clumsy, the least attractive, the least charismatic, the least eloquent contender for Prime Minister that we have ever seen. We've had people who had some of these attributes or lack of them in the past. Clement Attlee was no platform speaker, but he was honest. John Major was not charismatic, but he was honest, and moreover, he was nice. But here we have a person, which even Tony Blair describes as having a problem from the off, because although he's going to get power, he's already massively unpopular in the country. There was a poll today which asked people what their reasons for voting Labour tomorrow in the general election. 50% of them said because they were not the Conservatives. 50% said they were not the Conservatives. Do you know how many said it was because they like the Labour leader, Keir Starmer? 1%. 1% of the people are going to vote tomorrow to make Prime Minister a man that they overwhelmingly already dislike before he's got started. I've said, and I mean it, if Keir Starmer is the Prime Minister, Britain will be at war in the next 6 months. Like Tony Blair, he will take us into war after war of the American presidential choice. If it's Biden or Kamala, or if it's Trump, whatever war the United States decides to enter Keir Starmer will take Britain into that war. It might be in the Caucasus, it might be in the Ukraine, it might be in the Red Sea, it might be in the Persian Gulf, it might be in the South China Sea. The one place it will not be is in the English Channel. So if you have a son or a daughter of fighting age, you better seriously contemplate the fact that the man that seems likely to be the Prime Minister on Friday is already pre-programmed and has predetermined that Britain will go to war. And that's only one of the reasons for not voting for him. Dishonesty is a curse in politics, you know, and they don't come more dishonest than Keir Starmer. I give you only this, and I could give you much. I give you this. In the 1990s, almost 100 football supporters from the great city of Liverpool, whose people overwhelmingly backed Labour for generation after generation, were crushed to death as a result of the incompetence of the football authorities, the incompetence of the police chiefs on guard, on duty at that time. They were slain by negligence, by criminal negligence, but they were then slandered. And they were slandered in a dirty little rag called TheSun, owned then as now by Rupert Murdoch. But then it had sales in the millions. Now those sales have dwindled, and the influence of that paper faded almost to nothing. They were slandered in TheSun, which claimed that the Liverpool supporters had urinated over dead bodies, that Liverpool supporters had picked the pockets of their own compatriots, fellow Liverpool supporters, had robbed them as they lay there dead and dying. The people of Liverpool then announced a boycott of TheSun, which is virtually universally honoured in the city. Hardly a single copy of that newspaper has been sold in the decades since. Newsagents have had to take the hoardings of TheSun down. If they keep copies of the paper, they have to hide them. Most of them don't keep them at all. In Liverpool, a Labour fortress, the Labour leader, when running for the position, had to say that he would never write for TheSun. Guess where he said it? He said it in Liverpool. And then he did write for the Sun. He said he would never accept, as Tony Blair had done, to go and kiss the ass of Rupert Murdoch for the endorsement of his newspapers. But he then did exactly that. And today, that endorsement was forthcoming. And he said he was absolutely delighted to receive it. At least when Blair did it, it had millions of readers. Now it has hardly any readers at all. Keir Starmer just signed the death warrant of his own party in Liverpool and environs. Scores of parliamentary seats, scores of Labour MPs will now lose their seats as a result of Starmer's latest betrayal. He betrayed the Palestinians in Gaza. He betrayed the Bangladeshis in Britain, whom he singled out entirely wrongly as being an immigration problem that has to be solved by deportations. And now he's betrayed the people of Liverpool that had so loyally supported him over so many decades as loyal Labour voters. There's millions of people leaving the Labour coalition, millions of Muslim people who cannot stomach what Starmer has done and will not vote for Labour candidates as a result. Millions of people who've been on the marches, the protests, all over the country, non-Muslims, people who just are human and care when they see a beheaded child, care when they see a child starving to death as a result of a siege that Keir Starmer said Israel had every right to impose. And now there are millions of people in Merseyside with an additional reason to abandon Labour. So this election is not all done. Tomorrow morning at 7 a.m, my good wife and I will rise and be out on the streets of Rochdale, seeking every single vote that we can find to return me to the House of Commons for my 8th and final term. If elected, I will be the leader of the opposition. Starmer will probably be the Prime Minister. Who would you prefer to have sitting opposite him, landing blow after blow as every betrayal tumbles forth over the next 5 years? I hope and believe that most of you would prefer that leader of the opposition to be me, which is why Labour this evening is in such a frenzy of lying here in Rochdale that one after the other legal writ has landed on their desks, from Keir Starmer to Councillor Ali to the Rochdale Labour-controlled council itself. You're all in very serious trouble. Trust me on that. It's the mother of all talk shows. Some of us are old enough to have opposed first time around the idea that our young people denied a job, denied education that they can afford, will instead be sent out to pick up the trash. Compulsory, sent out to pick up the trash. We won't have it. We won't stand for it. I'll agitate here on the mother of all talk shows against it, and as the leader of the Workers' Party of Britain, I say no. Our workers demand dignity, demand decent wages, demand employment protection. We will not allow jobs to be diluted. We will not allow jobs to be spoiled by free labour, compulsory labour. We call that slavery, you see.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
Here's an amazing tweet that has attracted 1 million viewers in 7 hours from Z Squirrel. It's from my speech some years ago at the Oxford Union. 1 million views in exactly 6 hours and 50 minutes. Wow. Amazing. Now, we've got a poll, as always. Has the Gaza war changed how you will vote this year? Yes or no? You can vote on my Telegram, t.me/George Galloway, on my X, my Twitter, on the YouTube community poll, or on the YouTube stream. If you're watching on the YouTube stream, or indeed any of the platforms that allow you to do so, please share with all your friends, all your contacts. Tell them that we are frying tonight, and we're frying Keir Starmer tonight. You can vote, and thousands of you have already done so, and I'm only just announcing it now. Has the Gaza war changed how you will vote this year? Yes or no? If you want to call the show, it is toll-free in the US and Canada, +1 844 944 3344. It is free of charge in the UK and Ireland, 0808 196 5522. And the worldwide number outside of those 4 countries is 44203 966 2625. Now, Dr. Matthew Alford is a film producer of note. He produced The Writer with No Hands and Theatres of War, How the Pentagon and the CIA Took Hollywood. This is a subject in which I am intensely interested because I love politics and I love movies and I love television. And every time I'm watching them, I can see the hidden hand of the deep state in so many of these storylines. Dr. Alford, I'm glad to say, joins me now. Dr. Alford, thank you for joining us this evening. These films that you made are extremely important. Do tell the audience why.
Well, the most recent film that I co-produced is about the role of the military-industrial complex, or the deep state, or the national security state, however you want to call it, in rewriting Hollywood film scripts, rewriting network television shows, and we've also done some work subsequent to that on the rewriting of video games as well. Now, these rewrites are done largely for political reasons. It's not just cosmetic changes. It's often fundamental changes that are made to the whole nature of the program or show. You're showing some up on the screen now. Things that make the military look good, for example. Things that show, in the case of the day after, attempts to make it look like the United States is not provocative when it comes to nuclear weapons, or that it does not lose nuclear weapons. Things along those lines. So this most recent film, Theatres of War, the documentary, is important because we found new information that showed the extent to which the Department of Defense in particular, but also the Central Intelligence Agency, do these rewrites. At the beginning of this century, it looked like there were just a few hundred films that were made that had some kind of impact from the military. But we have now realized that there are many thousands of films, and that this was covered up by the PR organization that's in charge of this, the Entertainment Liaison Office, alongside sympathetic academics. And it's only been the last few years since our group has been able to put together this new information that's come from about 20,000 pages of Freedom of Information Act requests.
Now, do they do it openly, Doctor, or covertly? I mean, and why do the filmmakers agree to it? Is it money or is it fear?
It's not really fear. It's they do save money by, if they want to have Black Hawk helicopters, for example, or if you want to have an aircraft carrier, or just free men and advice. It's a really good way of getting of having that very cheaply. The military benefits because it gives them opportunities to recruit, but also more on the and they do admit that that they're keen to recruit people, but on the quiet they're also reshaping history. And our whole perception of what American foreign policy is in these thousands of different productions. The Hollywood producers themselves, they like it because they save a bit of money and they get very authentic looking films. There's only one group here which loses out, and that's the audience. That's us, because the films tend to be worse creatively because they're basically PR efforts on behalf of a militarized state, and also they're just politically less interesting as well.
And that's why most people in France think that the Second World War was won by the United States rather than the Red Army of the Soviet Union. And it won't be any different here in Britain, I'll warrant. Whereas in the 1940s and 50s, everybody knew that it was the Red Army that won the war, not G.I. Joe.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, I was going through the things that just today I was going through the documentation that we still don't have. And there's about 240,000 pages of notes apparently still with the Navy that we've not been able to acquire, and that's just one of the branches of the military. And one of the films that I noticed that we didn't have any information on, which is we know is definitely in one of the archives, is Saving Private Ryan. Classic film from the 1990s, which of course made it look like the Americans were the primary factor in winning the Second World War, when, of course, in reality, it was really the Russians that did it.
Now, movies are one thing, Doctor. Are they also influencing television?
Yeah, they're doing television as well. So shows like NCIS are completely rewritten from start to finish where necessary. So, for instance, when there's been plot lines about assault in the military, whole character arcs have been changed by the Department of Defense. We have the memos to demonstrate this very clearly, so that the military brass looks like it is investigating the assault against the wishes of the character who's been assaulted. You know, they care so much about having a non-racist, non-sexist military that they'll actually go over the heads of everybody to ensure, including the victim who's too scared to do anything. They'll go over the heads of them so that they do that. That's a long-running show, NCIS. But if you also think about some of the other agencies that are involved here, going back in time, I mean, look at what the FBI does. The FBI under J. Edgar Hoover in the 70s, the biggest show in the United States was called The FBI. He rewrote every single one of those 350 shows, and he made sure that there was nothing in there that offended his sensibilities, which included things like any agent having a girlfriend, anyone having any trace of homosexuality. And these are the crazy level of control that was exercised by the feds during that period. But the DoD now, Department of Defense now, does a similar thing, and the CIA has a comparable role. But then there's also other controversial police organizations as well. If you include NYPD and LAPD as well as a handful of productions that are affected by the White House directly. It's actually upwards of 10,000 titles that we're talking about.
One of the most powerful things I've seen recently on television was what purported to be the inside story of 9/11. It was called Looming Tower. It appeared to be honestly describing the internecine warfare between the different three-letter agencies in the United States. Were these spooks also involved in that?
I don't think that. I think being involved in very controversial conspiracy documentaries would be a hard sell for the Department of Defense. They have to be very careful about their image. So for instance, if you think about a film like American Sniper, which showed Chris Kyle, who was going around shooting Iraqis and shot over 100 Iraqis as a sniper fighter. This was a Clint Eastwood film from about 2013. The Department of Defense didn't want to go anywhere near that one because it was just too controversial. They like their propaganda to be really bland and boring. And it's the same thing with something like The Hurt Locker, which I'm sure you remember from 2008. They were initially interested in working on that one, but ultimately, PTSD, it's not their scene. There are films where they, of course, try and omit PTSD, where they try and take out from the script anything that shows sexism, racism, anything bad that happens to you in the Army, Navy, or any branch of the military. But with that one, because American Sniper was so baked, the controversy was so baked into the very title of it, that they couldn't do it. And similarly with the conspiracy films, I can't think of many conspiracy films, whether fiction or otherwise, where the Department of Defense is directly involved.
Now, of course, sexism and racism and transphobia and the rest, they're a big no-no for the American military, except when they're dropping their bombs and rockets on women and gay people, and no doubt trans people too. But as long as the bombs have got a rainbow on them with all the requisite colours, that makes it hunky-dory. We've talked a lot about America. Does this happen in Britain too?
Yes. In fact, I'm working with a PhD student at the moment, Tarek, on the British examples. And nothing really has been done about this except for if you go very much back into historical times to World War II. But we've found that it looks like there's a few hundred cases in Britain, including a lot of the James Bond films, which we kind of already knew, but also movies like the Kingsmen series, which is very much a kind of fantasy of recruitment, like a kind of working class kid who's sort of recruited by a kind of posh spy, played by Colin Firth, and then becomes this sort of hero. So the Kingsmen series is a good example of that. Also TV series like Spooks, and the David Schwimmer comedy Intelligence, which was set at GCHQ, was supported by MI5, for example.
Well, I wish you all the best with your research. I see we're running the title Real Power. I read a book, must be decades ago, called Real Bad Arabs, REEL, showing how Muslims and Arabs were really calumnified in films. They were painted as the very worst elements of humanity, and this was taken as for granted, was taken as normal in television and film. And sometimes it wasn't even an Arab playing the Arab. They'd put, in the way they used to do with the cowboy films, they'd put some polish on him so he could pass as Arab. I wish you all the best, Doctor. I think you're standing for Parliament, are you?
I am. I happen to be standing for a party that you probably agree with, I should think, George. It's called the Workers' Party. So...
Which constituency are you in?
I'm in Bath. I've been pushing very much the angle of in Bath, which is a very safe Liberal Democrat seat. But we've been pushing our Liberal Democrat frontrunner to make sure that she signs all the right things about Gaza and about foreign policy. So things like arms sales to Israel. And our group, over a period of several months, I think has had success with that. Even though she's a fairly right-wing Lib Dem, she seems to have done a lot of the right things there. But we want to keep holding her to account.
I think she used to be a Liberal councillor in Rochdale, if I'm not mistaken. I may be mixing her up. There are quite a few right-wing Liberal Democrats in Parliament. Well, look, Doctor, I wish you all the best with your parliamentary efforts tomorrow and with your continued research into real power, the power behind the screen. Thanks for joining us, Dr. Matthew Alford, film producer and researcher. Let's take a quick break, then it's calls from London and Horsham coming up. Stay tuned. I'll be leading scores of parliamentary candidates and potentially hundreds. And of course, if they were all to be elected, I might have enough support to become the Prime Minister. But unfortunately in this country, we don't elect the Prime Minister directly. If we did, we might be better off. We've got a Prime Minister for whom nobody at all voted at any level anywhere. He was not even elected by his own members of Parliament. But our Prime Minister is appointed by the King, if he's still there, on the basis that they can command the loyalty, the majority loyalty on the floor of the House, which would be of the order of 325, 326 MPs. It's exceedingly unlikely that that will ever be me. What I'm concentrating on trying to achieve is that it is not clear who has got the majority of seats, who will be able to form a government. In other words, I'm trying to bring about a hung parliament in which people like me, like you, will have some negotiating room, will have some trading room to give our vote 4 p.m. to the person who acknowledges and accepts and is ready to implement some of the key demands that we have, the foremost of which is peace, an end to Britain's role as a perpetual warmonger, as the tail of the American war dog. But there are many other demands that we have also. I am running to be Prime Minister in the sense that I will be leading a long list of Workers' Party parliamentary candidates. And if they were all to be elected, well, then we'd be flying.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
Has the Gaza war changed how you plan to vote this year? Answer yes or no. This year, so it includes Americans. It includes everyone who's got an election this year. You can vote on Telegram, on Twitter, on the YouTube community poll, or on the YouTube stream. Almost 20,000 of you have voted, and it's quite a stark contrast between some portals and others. Are we being hijacked again on one of them? Shujat is on the phone in London on Palestine. Go ahead, Shujat.
Hello there, George. Nice to talk to you again after a common program. I used to talk to you there. Just a question about this question of this the Jewish questions of this third temple and the promised Messiah coming down and the third temple being built and the red car and all that stuff. Do you believe in that crap at all? It's just a lunatic cult propagating their thesis, which the Americans very easily subscribe to.
Well, I take the view. You know, people can believe what they like. I know what I believe. And I will always believe it. But I did feel sorry for those red cows. They were bred to within an inch of their lives so that they would perfectly match the prophecy, I think Talmudic prophecy, which requires perfectly red heifers, cows, to be slaughtered and their remains splattered on various walls, and it's a very elaborate and carefully contrived plan to take over the Al-Aqsa Mosque, the third holiest shrine in Islam. I have no doubt that just across the way from the Al-Aqsa Mosque, where the Church of the Holy Sepulchre stands, that would have been damaged and destroyed in the ensuing tumult also. But it didn't happen. They didn't do the slaughter. Therefore, we're safe from the end times, at least for now. Armageddon is what they long for. Armageddon's actually a place, I've been in it, called Megiddo. It's not far from Gaza. They're trying their best to bring about Armageddon, and they are supported by millions of evangelical Christians in the Western world, particularly in the United States, who love Jews so much that when the end times come and the Messiah returns, all the Jews will have to be murdered unless they convert to Christianity. Go figure. Shujat, thanks. Davinder is in Leicester on the King. I presume he means Dennis Law, but maybe he means King Charles. Go ahead, Davinder.
Hi, George. Thanks for taking my call. I listened to your Have a Go with Galloway, and there was a caller today who was, when I watched it, was mentioning an old English law about if you went against the king, and he said it in Latin that, you lose the protection of the king. And you kind of like went in whilst he was talking, and you went on about, how you had to swear an oath and everything to him. But I'm not sure whether this is what he was trying to say. But the thing I felt that he was going to say was, because he did say about, with society, etc., etc. And I think he was trying to make the point that the law is very much alive with the cancel culture. If you say MPs, if they say anything, the whip gets taken away. If I say anything, say COVID or say about what's going on in Israel, everything. They can take your bank account, like what happened in Canada with the truckers. The law's very much alive if you raise your head above the pulpit. It would have been interesting whether that's what he was mentioning, but I personally felt that, yes, it is very much alive. You say anything against the current position of...
Well, cancel culture is the new king. Cancel culture has some surprising supporters, people who railed against it over the last few years over all kinds of things, COVID being one of them. We were told by these so-called libertarians, so-called paleo-conservatives, that the liberals were all snowflakes with their demand for safe spaces and to banish trigger words and all the fannying around on the liberal fringes that most people of any sense used to denounce until Gaza, when the cancel culture was being advocated by most of the very same voices that had denounced cancel culture over the preceding few years. Our position is, I think, the right one. Our position as a party is for freedom of speech, because if you don't have freedom of speech, you might miss the right answer. You see, if you don't allow dissident voices to be heard, what if one of those dissident voices was right and the prevailing orthodoxy was wrong, and you were all on the cattle truck to the abattoir? If only you'd listened to that one dissident whose voice you stilled and banned and shadow banned and algorithmically strangled. What if they were right? The John Stuart Mill put it very well. I won't try to recall the exact quote, but Mill's definition of freedom of speech was the right one. That though 99% perhaps of dissident views are wrong, even false, the one dissident voice on the one subject that you should have listened to and which would have saved you from disaster, you deliberately murdered that voice in order to railroad people into supporting the prevailing orthodoxy. Now, I myself have all of my life on everything from the 1970s onwards, all of my life been one of those dissident voices. And a remarkable number of the issues on which I found myself the dissenting voice, the Cassandra crying into the wilderness, turned out I was right. And those that sought to banish me turned out to be wrong. Devinder, thanks for that call. Comments on the interview with Dr. Alford. C. Coco says, films say CIA officers with families are cool, and they don't murder anyone with a speaking role. And Baby Gerald says, Tom Hanks and American Sniper are both blatant propaganda films. That's Hurt Locker, rather, and American Sniper. Sorry, Baby Gerald said, Tom Hanks would never have won World War II without Brad Pitt and his tank. Yeah, you're right. Collie Bean says Hot Locker and American Sniper are both blatant propaganda films. That's the reason I never watched either of them. Mega John 1 says, I can't watch any American movie or TV show anymore. Let's go to America, where Paul wants to talk about Biden. Paul in Florida. Go ahead, sir.
Hello, George. Thanks for taking my call. Can you hear me okay?
Welcome. Yeah, very clear. Go ahead.
Okay, I want to talk about removing Joe Biden from office. The United States Constitution provides a mechanism for removing the president who's deemed unfit to carry out his duties. This is through the 25th Amendment.
That's the 25th Amendment, isn't it, Paul?
Yeah, 25th Amendment. The vice president and the majority of Congress can declare the president unable to discharge the powers and duties of his office. If the president contests the decision, 2/3 vote by the Congress is required to confirm the cabinet's judgment. Now, you may say that the president, the vice president, and the cabinet and the Congress won't do this, no matter what condition the president is in, and that's probably true. But the fact is that presently, the president of the United States is unfit for office, and we all can see it.
Yeah.
And anyone concerned about
he's the commander-in-chief. He's the commander-in-chief of the world's most deadly and powerful army.
Right, and the rule of the Constitution, they should insist that its provisions should be enforced. And the idea that...
Yeah, but here's the problem, Paul. And yeah, and of course I agree with that. I called for that a long time ago. But here's the problem, isn't it? That if you push old Joe off the cliff, you've got Kamala Harris, who's arguably even more of an electoral liability, no?
Well, I think that the Constitution and the law trumps political expediency. You need to get rid of this guy, no matter who's second in line. If she's bad, we'll get rid of her. But we should be sticking with the Constitution. That's more important than anything else.
It's a fair point, Paul. I recall a front page of the London satirical magazine Private Eye, which had a picture of Richard Nixon, and behind him was standing his vice president, Spyro Agnew. And in the speech bubble, Nixon said, "Nobody's going to shoot me with this guy next in line." And indeed, that turned out to be true, because Spyro Agnew subsequently went to prison. Thanks, Paul. Podcast news now. MOATS is doing extremely well all round the world. Big numbers in Peru. Who'd have thunk it? Thailand, Singapore this week. In the top 40 in Italy, too. You can download the MOATS podcast by scanning the QR code in the corner of your screen now. Miss it? Miss out. Peter is in England, in Harrogate. Let's talk to him. Peter, welcome.
Thank you. Now then, George, it's a roller coaster ride of emotions is the situation we find ourselves in. And like you, I've shed tears over the images I've seen in Gaza and the West Bank. But do you know what? I laughed out loud and long when I saw that meme.
I've lost you. Are you there? We'll never know what that meme was that made him laugh and cry. How intriguing. And it's interesting that he's in Harrogate, because Harrogate was the scene of one of the great mysteries of the 20th century, when a crime novelist of note went missing, but turned out to be staying in a hotel in Harrogate. I'll give a box of sweets to anyone who can tell the whole story. Peter, I hope we get you back, because otherwise we'll be up all night wondering what it was. Elijah is in England too, in Ilford, on the general election. Go ahead, Elijah.
Hello, George. I'm a big fan of you. Big fan of your integrity, your straight-talking manner.
Thank you very much, Elijah. Thank you.
I was even telling a colleague at work, if we had more men like George, England would be a better place. I'm calling to say, tomorrow I'm going to vote for the first time, I think, in my adult life. I'm 28 now.
Really? Really?
Yeah. And I've gone on this website called Who Can I Vote For, which I advise anyone who doesn't know who to vote for to see the candidates. And I see that there's a Workers' Party candidate name. I'm not sure his name right now, but there's also an independent candidate named Noor. And I'm kind of in two minds who to vote for. She supports Palestine, and so do you. So I just wanted to call in to see, to ask why I should vote for you and not the independent. Now, what's the difference?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to get down to that kind of granular detail. You'll have seen in my last interview, I didn't even know until the last seconds that Dr. Matthew Alford was running for the Workers' Party in Bath. I don't want to misuse the show for that. All I would say is, if you regard me as you say that you do, then you should vote for the Workers' Party candidate, because he's my candidate. And if you vote for him, you're voting for me. I make no comment on the other fellow. I've never heard of him. But if he's the Workers' Party candidate, I hope you'll give him your support. Let's go back to Peter in Harrogate. Peter, we're on the edge of our seats. It was an Agatha Christie mystery. Go ahead.
I don't know why you lost me. Out here in the sticks.
Well, we lost you at the moment that you said you were laughing and crying about a meme, but we never heard what the meme was.
It's the one you showed with Penny Mordaunt with the hair. Do you know, I've wept shed loads of tears like you over the awful images that we've seen coming from Gaza and the West Bank. The dreadful images that people don't see, many of them are not reported. It's just awful. And like you, I've had to sometimes censor myself because I couldn't stand the pain. But to see something so amusing, there she is, like Margaret Thatcher on steroids. It was so funny, and thank you very much for that little light relief. And I'm grateful for what you do and your courage and your family. I'm a family man myself, and it's wonderful, and I'm also a Christian, to see, to experience the courage that you show on television, and I wish there were more men like you. Thank you.
God bless you, Peter, in Harrogate, and I'm deeply grateful, indeed moved, for what you said. I believe in God, so the only thing I'm afraid of is God. Occasionally my wife when she's in a bad mood, but essentially afraid only of God, because the only election that really matters to me is the last election, which will determine where we will remain for eternity. And so I'm all the time running for that particular office. I want to get into heaven. I want to make up for the sins that I have committed in my life, my personal life, rather than my public life. I think I can say I have never sinned in public life. But in personal life, yes, of course I have, like virtually, if not everybody else. So, it's not so much courage as obedience. I believe, I'm a believer, and therefore I must do what my conscience tells me to do. I believe that my conscience is my daily communion with God. My conscience is telling me what God would tell me if God were talking to me, which he doesn't, of course. He only talks to George Bush and Tony Blair at the time of the invasion of the Iraq War. So thank you for your kind words. Penny Mordaunt is much more fragrant than Margaret Thatcher. Margaret Thatcher was a hatchet-faced woman. She may have had the hair, she may have had the handbag, she may have had the high heels, but she stood up to have a pee. She was as hatchet-faced, a hard-faced man as ever governed our country. And millions of people had their lives ruined as a result of her. Penny Mordaunt, I've seen her at close quarters in Parliament. I've never had a conversation with her, so I don't know her. But I get the feeling that she's Mrs. Nice. And if the Tories pick her, they will be differentiating themselves from Farage and the mean and nasty Reform Party. And they may or may not thereafter have a future. Maybe a merger with the Liberal Democrats, who knows. But if she loses her seat, and if there are so few Conservative MPs who survive this election, that there's a majority of zealots in the ranks, they may choose the worst person in Parliament, Cruella Braverman. They may choose her, in which case we'll be in a Dutch auction of nastiness between Reform and Cruella Braverman. In which case, why bother having two separate enterprises? Just merge them already. And that's what they may very well do. Now, coming up after the break is one of our great guests that we've had on the show many times, but there's never been a better time to talk to Miko Peled. Stay tuned. It's the mother of all talk shows. The British set up Israel so that it could be, in the words of a British cabinet minister at the time, a loyal little Jewish Ulster in a sea of hostile Arabism. We no longer need that because we're the tail of the dog, not the top dog. But America needs it. It needs to keep the Arabs divided and weak, needs to keep them defending fake borders that were drawn for them by an Englishman and a Frenchman, Sykes and Picot, need to keep the puppet presidents and the corrupt kings in their places, the better for Western countries to plunder their wealth and to sell weapons to these dictatorships as part of a Faustian pact to keep them in power as long as they will share some of their petrodollars with us. As for the rest of it, it gets a bit uncomfortable. The truth is, this is the truth. If I had been a friend of Israel instead of a friend of Palestine, I might be in number 10 Downing Street right now. I might be running to be the Prime Minister of Britain right now. I might have been already the Foreign Secretary of Britain before now. Why not? I have the experience, I have the ability, I have the knowledge. Why have I not been and will never be any of those things? And the answer is that if you support Palestine, you have the mark of Cain upon your forehead, and you will never prosper in British politics or in American politics, even less in American politics. And that's because of the political power of the pro-Israel lobby on both sides of the Atlantic.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
Has the Gaza war changed how you will vote this year? Yes or no? 20,000 people have voted. And by and large, most people say that it has. Although a very significant minority of people say that it hasn't. That might be because they were going to vote the way they're going to vote anyway, and that they had no intention of voting for the war criminals anyway, or it could mean that there's a switch in political opinion away from the candidates that have supported genocide. But anyway, get your vote in. You've got about 45 minutes still to vote. But first, we've got the one and only Miko Peled, Israeli author and activist, speaking from the new studio at Palestine House of Freedom in Washington, D.C. My goodness, Miko, Washington has changed since I was last there, giving the Senate a good bloody hiding back in 2005. We've now got a Palestine House of Freedom. Tell us about that first, please.
Well, good to be with you again, George. And that I remember that excellent hiding that you gave the Senate. I mean, that's a wonderful. If anybody hasn't seen it, I recommend they go on YouTube and find it and watch you testify there. That was brilliant.
Thank you.
Yes, we established this organization here. We're just a few blocks away from the Capitol here in Washington, D.C., Palestine House of Freedom, to demonstrate to people that there is a pathway to peace in Palestine, and it's by dismantling the apartheid state and allowing for a free, democratic Palestine to take its place between the River Jordan and the Mediterranean on all of historic Palestine. For reasons that Well, you know very well that is not part of the conversation here or in the UK for that matter. And that has to become part of the conversation. People can no longer talk about leave things as they are. There has to be a serious pathway to peace discussed. And the pathway, again, I'll say, it's dismantling the apartheid state and establishing a real democracy with equal rights on historic Palestine. So that's our mission, and that's what we're hoping to, that's the mission that we're hoping to push forward. And particularly into the capital, which is,
and
like I said,
are you having? Yeah, I'm guessing that as yet, the Freedom House is not getting much passing trade from the Congress, which seems to be. I hate this. Believe me, I never wanted to use these memes, but it seems to be occupied territory. Seems to be bought and paid for by the Israel lobby.
Yes, look, I don't think anybody is denying that in order to get things done and to get the conversation moving in the right direction, we need to circumvent the regular politics by using creative strategy. We're trying to do something that has never been done. We're up against, like you said, an adversary that has got a great deal of funds and a history and relationships that goes back at least 100 years here in Washington, D.C. And yet we have to pursue this. We don't have a choice. They're not going to invite us in. We have to figure out how we're going to get in, how we're going to change the conversation, and again, how we're going to bring the end to the genocide of the Palestinian people and a peaceful resolution to Palestine. So yes, we are. There's no question that this is going to be a very difficult path, but we're gearing up for it. And like I said, geographically, we are here in Washington, like again, a few blocks away from the Capitol, and we're ready to go. We're ready to do this.
Fantastic news. If Joe Biden is removed and Kamala Harris assumes the throne, will there be any difference in her attitude to the conflict, or is she so stupid she thinks Sinai is the plural of sinus?
It's hard to keep a straight face with you, George, sometimes. Both you and I are old enough to know that it's not about this or that elected official. It's about what we do to get them to do the right thing. I mean, I think it was Reagan who eventually decided that it was time to boycott South Africa, and that led to the end of apartheid in South Africa. So I don't think it matters who the person is that's in charge. We need to get them to do what we want them to do. You know what I mean? I mean, the voters, the people who are involved, in a place like us, which is dedicated to getting them to that point. So I don't really think it matters one way or the other if it's Joe Biden or somebody else. We need to do what we need to do to change the conversation on Palestine, to end the genocide of the Palestinian people, to establish a free, democratic Palestine from the river to the sea with equal rights. That's the mission. Who happens to be the prime minister or the president at the time? I don't think that's relevant right now at all.
Let me switch course, if I may, Miko. You are, of course, famously the son of a general. What do you make of the current situation on the northern border? It looked like the balloon was about to go up and a full-scale invasion of Lebanon was going to be mounted by the Netanyahu gang. That seems to have cooled a notch or two down even in the last hours. What's your evaluation?
There's no doubt that the Israelis are terrified of a full war with Hezbollah. They know they have a history with Hezbollah, and they know that they cannot defeat them, not by a long shot. They're going to be defeated quite decisively if they go, army to army with Hezbollah. They know that the entire northern front is going to be decimated. Right now, already, citizens of the state of Israel who live in the north are afraid for their lives. They're migrating south and so on. Israel always has the option, of course, to use air power, but the rest of the world, I don't think, is willing to see southern Lebanon destroyed once again and millions of refugees moving out of southern Lebanon. So I think that's why we see the standstill. I think that's why we don't see this escalation. That's really where things stand right now. And I think obviously less war is always better, but I think that's what it is. And I think the fact that the Israelis are terrified of a full-on war with Hezbollah has a lot to do with the fact that this is not escalated. And of course, they're still fighting in the south. Genocide is continuing. They've got the Yemeni forces that they're dealing with at the Bab el-Mandab. So the Israeli forces, the Israeli military has got a lot to deal with right now, and they're not a very capable military to begin with.
I wanted to turn to that because I saw a piece today that said the port of Eilat has literally gone bankrupt. It has filed for bankruptcy. This one of the most important ports in Israel, now bankrupt. And that's everything to do with the great efforts of the Yemeni people in the Red Sea, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. You know, I was on Piers Morgan's show a few months ago, and he was very unhappy when I said, he mentioned the Yemeni forces. I said, well, they're the only ones who are acting responsibly because they are responding to the genocide that's taking place. And he didn't like it, and he ended the show. I know you've been on the show recently too. And I'm not plugging him in. I'm just saying clearly the Yemeni forces and their efforts are taking a serious toll on the economy, on the apartheid economy. And like I said, this is exactly the responsible thing to do. And I just want to say one more thing. We talked about the northern front. You know, behind me, what you're seeing is the Galilee. This is the Sea of Galilee, and this is the Galilee, which of course is right now very close. Hopefully, there won't be an all-out war, but they're very close to the possibility of war is very strong. But yeah, clearly the port of Eilat and the Israeli economy, the apartheid economy, has suffered greatly as a result of the good work of the Yemeni forces. Absolutely.
A lot of people are leaving Israel, aren't they? I used to quite often be in Israel in the 1980s, 90s. And there were a lot of very good people as well as very bad ones in Israel. From what I know, most of the good people have left. But in the last period, hundreds of days now, from what I've seen, the airport is chock-a-block with people flying out. Is that beginning to take its toll societally and economically also?
Yes, I think we've all seen those images of the airport, chock-a-block and people wanting to leave, and there are not a lot of commercial flights because some of the foreign airlines are still not flying there. And so certainly there's chaos. You know, I think one of the obvious results of the Palestinian attack of October the 7th is that they brought the apartheid state to practically shut it down. I mean, they brought it to complete paralysis for a while, and it's still paralyzed. And so there are all these different aspects of the results of this attack that we're seeing in all sorts of different ways. And of course, the flight of people is one of those things. And the economy is in disarray, the military is in disarray, the police is in disarray, the society is in disarray. The media doesn't even know where to start. I mean, the conversations and the arguments and the commentary and the Israeli media it's insane. So yes, of course, it's taking a societal, but it's an effect on Israeli society. But of course, this is part of the one of the results of the attacks of October the 7th. They shut it down.
But there are other dimensions, aren't there? Although they are, of course, everything is connected to the other. But this decision by the Israeli government to force the Hasidic Jews, the Orthodox Jews, to serve in the army, that has the potential, and it's already had the effect of violence on the streets, because these Orthodox people refuse it. But also many of their leaders have said, if you're going to force us to serve in the army, we're leaving Israel. Do they mean that?
Oh yes, absolutely. I mean, the struggle of the ultra-Orthodox community has been decidedly anti-Zionist and very, very effective, and many are leaving. I'm actually in the process of writing a book about this community and their anti-Zionist activities. And one of the things that we know very well is their refusal to participate in the military. And that's been a struggle that's been going on for a very long time. And they are leaving. They're going to any place that they can in order to take their kids, take their families where they're safe. Because right now, that community is not safe. And it's never really been safe under the apartheid regime. Are we still there?
Why did the Israeli government force it through then? Was this part of the horse trading inside the coalition?
Well, there was a status quo for many years because the military didn't want that community and the community didn't want the army. And then it was maybe 15, 20 years ago when Yair Lapid got into politics, that was his wedge issue. That was the issue that allowed him to become, famous in politics because it was something that nobody knew how to deal with. And he managed through his, in a very, I think, very racist manner, criminalize that community and put them in a position where they are somehow, the comparisons and the slurs used against them, I won't repeat here, by regular Israelis. They're used by regular Israelis against that community. But they are strong and they are, they're suffering greatly. I mean, we don't see this in the regular media, the assaults, the terrible assaults by the Israeli police into their communities, into their neighborhoods. I've met with several of their activists that are dealing with the struggle against the draft, who are living in hiding. They're on the lam because they know that if they're arrested, they'll be beaten, they'll be tortured, they'll be thrown in jail, and so on. And it's a powerful struggle, and this is not a struggle that anybody can win. They're going to win. There's no way they can be forced to serve. And I'm sure you've seen the images where they hold up signs saying, we are going to die before we serve in your army. We will not serve. And in their community, in their neighborhood in Jerusalem, in Mea Shearim, there are huge banners, and they've been there for years, saying we will not serve in their army. A Jew is not a Zionist, and so on. So that's been their stance for a very long time.
I'm fascinated. I've been in Mea Shearim many times. I'm fascinated by it and that community. I really look forward to your book on that subject. So just finally, how can people help the Palestine House of Freedom in Washington? Is there a website? Can people donate? What do you need?
Yes, there's a website. It's Dar al Hurriya. You can see the name behind me. We're using the Arabic name. We're adding the English name soon, but for now it's the Arabic name, Dar al Hurriya, which is the House of Freedom. There's a website. We're on social media. We're on all the platforms, and we just embarked on that. We just completed actually a series of posts about the apartheid and showing how the state of Israel is an apartheid regime using the Amnesty report that came out a couple of years ago. And so, like I said, we're on social media. We have a website. If people want to contribute, of course, there's a way to contribute on the website. If anybody wants to learn more, they're welcome to message me or message us on social media. It's DARALHURRIYA, daralhurriya.org. And again, like I said, our mission is to educate.
I look forward to visiting you later. Yeah, I look forward to visiting you later in the year, God willing. Thank you, Miko Peled, as always, and the best of luck to the House of Freedom in Washington. Has the Gaza war changed how you will vote this year? Yes or no? You've got about 25 minutes still to vote. You may not affect the outcome, but you'll affect the plurality, that is for sure. Let me take a quick break, and then it's your show right up until the end. Stay tuned. Now, you're used to telephoning questions into me on my various shows, I've spoken with thousands of you over the last couple of decades. But now, on my new show, you get a chance to appear in person on a video wall. It would be good to see what you looked like as well as what you sounded like. It's very simple to get on my show. Go to www.haveitoutwithgalloway.com. Just register there. We'll get you on the television with me. Come and have a go if you think you're hard enough.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
I do hope you'll join me on Have It Out with Galloway. I'm quite happy to take on all comers, but many, maybe most of the people that appear on my video wall with a question hate me. And I know that most of you don't hate me, so that means you haven't yet written to haveitoutwithgalloway.com. Please do. And be my guest on the show. It's on Tuesdays at 7 p.m. UK time on my YouTube channel. Let's go to Manchester, where Lisa wants to talk about tomorrow's election. Lisa, go ahead, please.
Hi, George.
Hi.
Yeah, I just want to, well, first and foremost, I want to absolutely thank you from the bottom of my heart for everything that you're doing, everything that you stand for and always have done. Yeah, and I just want to wish you the very best of luck for tomorrow.
How kind. Well, look, Lisa, I appreciate that. I think we're going to win here tomorrow. But win or lose, I'll continue to do what I've always done. I'll do it in Parliament. It's better if I can do it from Parliament, but either Parliament or through this screen or on the streets or in print, I'll do it as long as God gives me breath. It's not, the reason I'm only going to do it one more time is not at all because I'm Joe Biden. It's not that I don't think I can do it again. It's for family reasons. You know, my youngest child is 3. I'm living out of a suitcase much of the time. And my children have to live out of suitcases too when they can catch up with me. So I think 5 more years is enough. And by that time, I'll have made such a difference in Rochdale that we'll have a good chance of holding the seat with my successor candidate. I also think that many of our candidates are going to do extremely well and many are going to win tomorrow. In Greater Manchester, across Birmingham, in London, in the East End of London, in the West End of London, in many parts of the country, actually, we are going to win seats and we're going to win hundreds of thousands of votes. And I believe the Workers' Party is now firmly established on the British political stage. And that's quite an achievement in just 4 years. Our branding, our livery, our message, our leadership is now very firmly on the political stage. And Keir Starmer is going to give us a dripping roast of targets over the next few years. If he's the Prime Minister, he'll give us 1 per day. There'll be 1 per day betrayal by Keir Starmer. And if I'm there in Parliament, leading the opposition to Keir Starmer, our future can only be a bright one. Lisa, God bless you for your kind comments. Deef says, imagine GG is leader of our country. Charismatic, dapper, and keeping us out of wars. He gets my vote. Thank you very much for that. Kestrel says, you get what you vote for. It's that simple. Real change, vote for Workers' Party, GB, or independence. Thank you. You're right. You'll get the Parliament you vote for. If you send donkeys, don't expect them to do any more than put their faces in the nosebag and munch their way through the next 5 years. Dave Young says, there's no Workers' Party where I live, so I'll be going green. Good luck to all Workers' Party candidates, left independents, and particularly Andrew Feinstein in Holborn and St. Pancras. Thanks, Dave. Susan Douglas says, in Canada, we used to have a Reform Party, and it was laughed at. Okay, here's the phone numbers again. In the US and Canada, it's toll-free, +1 844 944 3344. In the UK and Ireland, also free of charge, 08081 965522. And across the world, 44203 966 2625. The next call is from Jamaica. Let's go there. Who wouldn't? Robert in Jamaica. Most welcome. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, George. I'd like to wish you all the luck for tomorrow with your party. It's very historical.
Thank you.
Needs a change and move to the independent, whether to the Workers' Party or other independent. That's the only message that vote can send that can change Britain at this time. I would also like to...
Well said, Robert.
Very much. I'd like to pay tribute to Assange and recognize his, what I'd call partial freedom, because he didn't get the honorary discharge that he deserved. But he gave a tremendous sacrifice of a good part of his life to people. So I'd like to suggest that there be a GoFundMe for him. I don't know, it needs to be set up properly. Unfortunately, I don't have the contact or the knowledge of how to do that, because it should be set with someone close to him, maybe his wife or anything, to ensure the integrity of it. But I think the world owes him. I've always been upset that people didn't stand up for him. And there's another hero out there that we need to recognize who's been unfairly jailed, and that's Imran Khan. He was a brilliant leader of Pakistan, one for peace. And of course, that's the thanks that he gets, because the world powers ensured that he was labeled, etc., and put in jail. He'll be out eventually, but while he's suffering, we have to worry and pray for him. And I think also...
Great call, Robert. I agree with everything that you said, and including the crowd fund for Julian. They may decide to do something like that. I have no inside knowledge on that, but they certainly deserve it, and it would certainly be a very well supported initiative. Let's go back to England from Jamaica to Horsham, where Winston wants to talk about Palestine. Go ahead, Winston.
Yeah, I just want to know, why are people not reacting to the information they're receiving through the media and politicians? The policy's just, they're not going to overturn the policy. So when's the action going to happen?
I don't know what action the British people are ready to take, Winston. I know that there's a big action tomorrow, and that action requires people only to pick up a pencil and put an X on a ballot paper. It doesn't ask them to exert themselves more than that. It doesn't cost them any money. It doesn't cost them any blood or sweat. Just go to the ballot box tomorrow and vote against the genocide parties. It's really not rocket science. And if you vote for the two genocide parties, well, you're going to get the government that you deserve, and it will take you to war, and it might consume your own children. How about that? Last word to you, Winston.
But the policies are already set, and nobody's changing them, no matter who's in power. It's a done deal already.
I've got 154 candidates, Winston. People could vote for all 154 of them. And if they do, I'll be the Prime Minister.
I hope you are.
Thank you, brother. Well, let's quit while I'm ahead. Thanks for the call. Now, we are on radio, of course, in the US. I omitted to mention it, as well as being watched worldwide We are listened to on KPFK 90.7 FM right across Los Angeles and Southern California. So a big welcome to our audience there. KPFK serves not just Los Angeles and Southern California, but their giant transmitter covers the city of LA and to the north, east, and south, from Santa Barbara to San Diego. KPFK is on 90.7 FM on the Malibu coast, 99.5 FM in China Lake, 98.7 FM in Isla Vista, and 93.7 FM in Rancho Bernardo, San Diego, and of course worldwide on the internet. Stig is on the line in Finland on the French elections. I told you this was the Global University of the Airwaves. Stig, welcome to the show.
Yes. Yes, I have been pretty amazed and also disappointed at the leaders of the French left who have now more or less joined forces with Macron. I mean, it is of course quite okay to be critical in many respects of the national rally, but to join forces with Macron is something entirely different than being critical against the national rally. I mean, Macron is a guy who has spoken about sending troops to Ukraine in order to keep this Nazi-minded regime up, and he is ready to sacrifice many lives for that purpose and even threatens world peace. So I cannot understand how you can prefer someone who is speaking about sending troops to Ukraine over someone who is saying very clearly that they will not do that. I mean,
well, yes, she did say, yeah, but Stig, she did say that she would not send French forces, but so has Macron, having earlier threatened them. On the other hand, she is fully in support of NATO, has no intention whatsoever of changing France's relationships in NATO, and supports the continued sanctions against Russia and the continued funding of the regime in Kiev. So there's actually not any difference between Macron and Le Pen on Ukraine, because both are saying they will not send forces, both are backing the sanctions, both are backing the funding of Ukraine, and both are backing NATO. Having said that, I agree with you. The best position for Mélenchon is neither Le Pen nor Macron. That used to be the position of the great Georges Marchais, who, when asked about France's nuclear weapons, said, we'll point them in both directions. That's what I would do if I was in Mélenchon's shoes. Last word to you, Stig.
Well, I mean, it is perhaps possible that Macron has been backing down because he has such a hard reaction against him in this respect. But I'm not. I don't trust his word that he might. No, he's a
I wouldn't trust him further than I could throw him. Come to think of it, I could throw him a very long way. But I wouldn't trust them anyway. Stig, in Finland, on the French elections, you see the quality of debate here on the mother of all talk shows. Chris Cox says, my local Bangladeshi restaurant has a new meal on the menu for 30 pence called Starmer's Promise. I asked, what is it? My friend Ali said, it's an empty carton. How wonderful is that? Sammy Gitt says, a win for Starmer's Labour is also an endorsement of genocide by a majority of the country. If Labour's the left cheek and the Conservatives the right cheek, reform is what emerges from in between. Andy in Stockport wants to talk about Ghislaine Maxwell. I'm all ears, Andy. Go ahead.
Hi, George. I'm just going to get straight to the point. There's some information here that I don't think you or your viewers might not be aware of. I'll begin with one of the star witnesses in the Ghislaine Maxwell trial waived anonymity to speak to the Daily Mail, and she said she was going to name and shame some of these elite people, and her name was Caroline Adriano. Now, Caroline Adriano died in May of a accidental drug overdose in a motel room in Florida, in Palm Beach, and there was absolutely no media coverage of this at all. Not even an obituary, not even a mention of a service, no coverage, media blackout. Now, the only reason why I know about this is because the Daily Beast did cover it, and I've got the article right here. The Daily Beast phoned the Florida police to see where they were going with the investigation, and they said it was a closed case as an accidental overdose. Her mother begged the police to investigate further because she said that her daughter didn't touch drugs, didn't touch alcohol. She had 4 children. They were moving to a new home. They were looking forward to starting a new life after all this was put behind them. But the police obviously haven't done that, quite conveniently. And the other information I have, again from the Daily Beast, is that Ghislaine Maxwell has now been moved to a Category C prison in Florida called, I'm just looking at it now, Tallahassee Prison. And this is like a low-level jail, very relaxed. And not only that, the wing that she's been transferred to is even more relaxed than the rest of the jail. Now, most of the prisoners that would be in that wing would have shown remorse. They would have done about 10 years of a sentence to demonstrate that they are reformed characters, and yet she's shown no remorse. She's only done 2 years of a 20-year sentence for one of the most horrific crimes, let's face it. I can't think of a worse crime. I think it's worse than murder. But there you go. She's just strolled into a Category C prison because of who she is.
Well,
but
she ain't going to jump off the Tallahassee Bridge, that's for sure. She has made her peace with power. She has not named her clients. She has not, I mean, we've got 2 people convicted of sex trafficking minors, but we don't know to whom she trafficked them. We don't know to whom Epstein and her trafficked these minors for sexual purposes. How can that be? Why is nobody trying to find it out? Where are the lists of the people to whom they trafficked these children? That suicide of the lady you mentioned sounds like the least convincing suicide since, I don't know, Jeffrey Epstein. Thanks, Andy. Bilal is in Denmark on Palestine. Go ahead, Bilal.
Hello, Mr. Galloway. First of all, thank you very much for your amazing show. We have many people here in Denmark who follow you and have great respect for you because you talk freely from your heart. I wanted to say that I follow a lot of what is happening here in Europe, especially in Denmark, and right now the government are trying to scare us by saying, even if you say free Palestine, they are trying to scare us that you can get a prison sentence. A guy 3 days ago, he got the first prison sentence because he said free Palestine. Nothing violently or anything like that, just by saying that. And it's from the kindergarten and all the way to the universities. They just try to scare us all the time. And I would say that I'm born here, I'm raised here from 1977. I'm third generation Danish, but still we don't feel welcome anymore here in Denmark and Europe. What we would love is that some of the politicians like you could stand up here in Denmark and say what is really happening, instead of just trying to scare us by this media propaganda all the time that Muslims are dangerous and all that. I will keep it very shortly. Thank you very much, and we are lots of people.
I'm grateful to you. I know a number of Palestinians who moved to Denmark and indeed to Norway, and I'm sorry to hear that things are not as good for them as they should be, and perhaps as they once were. A salute to all my friends in Denmark, indeed in Scandinavia as a whole. Thank you, Bilal. Mustafa is in Manchester on the Muslim vote. Let's hear about that. Mustafa, welcome.
Hi, George. It's a blessing to talk to you. I wanted to be on the show just to present my opinion on the Muslim vote. I think, to be honest, it's the first time in, I think, British history that the unification of the Muslim vote has put the British Parliament under serious pressure. And it's the first time I've seen the Muslim community here in the UK coming together in a way never seen before. I mean, even in the mosques locally, you've got people talking about politics when it wouldn't normally happen. And it's a new horizon that's been opened for us, thanks to you, of course, opening the eyes of everyone in the Muslim community, seeing that, voting is a serious issue. And voting is the best way to change our future for our children, for ourselves, and the next generation that's to come. They have to know that voting is the only way to change British politics the way it's carried out. And the Muslim community in history, throughout history, has always participated politically and in the armies of the world. We've put forward our blood, our children, our generations, to help society in better ways. We've done so much for the world, and the world needs to recognize this. The world has recognized it, but it's time again for the Muslim community to rise up again. I think it seems to me like a renaissance of the British Muslim community, and we are at a phase where I believe and I feel that as a community in Britain, we are at the step of a new horizon, new dawn, where Muslims from all areas of the UK and leaders from all communities will come forward and step forward and create positive change locally and internationally. And that's my piece of what I'm going to say to you.
Mustafa, a wonderful call. You're absolutely correct. It was happening anyway because of Gaza, but it has intensified because of Starmer's attack on the Bengali people in Britain. No Bengali is going to vote Labour. None. Tomorrow. None. Nobody who calls themselves a Bangladeshi origin Briton is going to vote for Keir Starmer tomorrow. Not a single one. Trust me on that. You'll see the outcome. Let's go to my good wife, Gayatri. What's rattling, Gayatri?
Once more, Rochdale is rattling. It's Rochdale, Rochdale, Rochdale. Wishing you good luck, wishing you the best of success. And as the previous caller asked you for advice, who should we vote for when we do not have a Workers' Party candidate in their constituency? The message, as you said before, is of course, as long as you do not vote for the genocidal endorsing parties. The poll this week was asking whether the Gaza war changed the way they vote. Now, we didn't specify the country because according to Erobos, our friend Erobos in New York, this year he's done some research and there will be at least 97 countries in this world that will be having elections in 2024, including Togo, Jamaica, where we had a caller from, Panama, Bulgaria, everywhere. Most of the answers obviously are from the UK and the US. From the US, Linda Jurgensen says, I would have voted for RFK Jr., but now I have no one to vote for, apart from Jill Stein, of course, who we endorse, our friend. And from the UK, Mr. Iqbal says, I have been a Labour Party member and have been giving monthly donations for 28 years, but not anymore. I'm educated, I'm politics aware, and I have a very good understanding of world affairs. I love George Galloway and the Workers' Party, and God willing, my vote and my family's will go for that tomorrow. All 47 of them. 47 from one family. And as for
I love
Gaza,
big families.
Yeah, we love big families. And as for Gaza affecting the voting, Sherry says, Gaza is showing us what is really happening with the government. Students are getting into debts. The NHS is collapsing. Social care in the country is being targeted. The disability and inclusion communities are being ignored. But they are happy, more than happy, to spend millions on bombs, not only to destroy Palestine, but all the other countries that they want to oppress. And of course, we made a point out of this. You have specified that it's £12,000 per minute that the UK spends on weapons. Imagine what a transformation you can make within the country if you wouldn't spend it on that, putting countries on fire. We made this point on the billboards that has been showing on digital billboards nationwide. We received an email from Eva Kulakiewicz. She was walking in London and she found one of our Workers' Party billboards saying exactly this. Do you want £12,000 per minute being spent on NHS or on putting countries on fire around the world? So thank you for that picture, Eva. This is from Tim, and I've received a couple of them. He says, I refuse to vote for genocide-supporting parties and have no independent candidates, which leaves me no option other than not to bother. How many times will we hear the words, we have a mandate from the British people? Well, not in my name, you lying, cheating, thieving, and he goes on. But Tim, please, if you do not vote, it means that those that are supporting genocide are, of course, going up. Am I not right, George? He needs to vote.
Absolutely right. Everyone should vote. They should vote for anybody except Labour and the Conservatives. If there's no Workers' Party and there's no decent anti-genocide party, and there are some, there's the Greens, for example, although I have many, many differences with them, you've just got to vote for the best anti-genocide option available. And if there are literally none, if there's only Labour and Conservative on the ballot paper, you should still go and you should put a big mark through the middle of the ballot paper and say right on it, none of the above, no genocide. Spoil your ballot paper rather than staying at home.
Exactly that. Look at this poignant message that Pittsburgh Jude says. This July the 4th, as the US celebrates its independence from the UK, I hope the UK will declare its independence from the US by voting you and the Workers' Party. I just want to close, because we are short of time. I just want to close. We saw earlier a clip from Have It Out with Galloway. Well, this next week we will have a fantastic guest on the show. It's no one less than Francesca Albanese. So please join the show.
That is a breakthrough.
You will be joining the show. So register your interest to join our digital audience, our wall audience, by going to haveitoutwithgalloway.com. and ask her all the questions you have in mind.
That's wonderful. I didn't know that. That's genuine news to me, and very good news. We've been trying to talk to her here on MOATS for quite some considerable time too. So well done, Gayatri, for that booking. I promise I'll take you out for chips after the show. Thanks for that social media roundup. Sean is in Northern Ireland on a united Palestine. Go ahead, Sean.
Hello, George. How are you?
All good, thank you, by the grace of God. What would you like to say?
Good. I would just like to firstly wish you a big, good success, luck of the Irish for tomorrow on the Workers' Party.
Thank you.
I was
Thank you.
I was actually wanting to talk about Miko. His first point when he started to speak was how can we generate more interest on the issue of Palestine and a united Palestine. Now, I think that the issue starts with the youth in America, in the UK, in Ireland, everywhere. The youth are coming out en masse in support of a free Palestine and no genocide. And plus, in Israel, the education system teaches their young hatred of Muslims, hatred of the Palestinians. That also has to change for anything to change over there. I just want to know your thoughts on that.
Well said. You're absolutely correct that there are millions of religious people, mainly Muslims, in your country and mine, who are with the Palestinians against Netanyahu and will allow that to influence their vote. There are other millions who are not religious people, not Muslims, who are just humans, who cannot bear what they have been watching and cannot bear the collaboration with it of our political leaders. And many of them also will allow that to influence their vote. It's absolutely true that the young people are predominant amongst that second section, both sections. The young people are in very significant numbers, looking at this situation now anew with open eyes in a way that they did not perhaps before. And they're taking to the streets. They are voting with their feet in protests and demonstrations, and not just once or twice, but over and over again. And that's wonderful. But people like you and me have a tendency to confuse thousands with millions. The second biggest component of the Reform Party's support in Britain is 18 to 25s. You tend to think, don't you, of Nigel Farage, gin and jag, smoking fags, running off at the mouth about Johnny Foreigner. That's your typical mind's image, isn't it, of right-wing British nationalism. And of course there are a lot of those. But the second biggest section of Farage's support is 18 to 25-year-olds. And it's unlikely they are on the Palestine demonstrations. So we still have a lot of work to do. Reform are in second place here in my constituency. I don't expect to lose to them. But if I lose to anybody, it will be to them. And Farage will have a foothold in Rochdale. Imagine. And 18 to 25-year-olds will have been amongst the strongest supporters of the Reform agenda. So all I'm saying, I'm not disagreeing with you, Sean, all I'm saying is we mustn't get carried away with how strong we now feel on this Palestine question. We are stronger than we have ever been. And hallelujah, that is a very, very big achievement. But we still have many that we have not yet persuaded. Thanks for that call. Mohammed is in London. Go ahead, Mohammed.
Oh, finally. Thank you very much, Mr. Galloway. I have been watching you for years and years now. As Muhammad Hijab said in your show, I am just one of your followers and really want to appreciate you from the bottom of my heart for whatever you do, especially in whatever you are doing for Gaza and Palestine, and you are always on the right side of the history. Thank you very much for that. And furthermore, I would like to ask you, for how long, for how many years would these countries keep invading countries like Syria, Palestine, Afghanistan, and many more, and till how long they will keep toppling the governments, just like what they did with Imran Khan. And his all fault was just visiting Russia for 250 million Pakistani people. He just went to Russia and U.S. toppled his government. I just want to ask, how long do we need to suffer for that, and for how long will be tagged as the bad people? And again, best of luck to you, Mr. Galloway. It would be a lifetime pleasure if I would just to shake hands with you and to salute you in person.
God bless you. Thank you, Mohammed, for your beautiful words, not just about me, but about Imran Khan and about Palestine also. You ask how long. Well, as long as we let them. How long shall they kill our prophets? Asked Bob Marley in Redemption Song. The answer is as long as we let them. If we, who are the many, stand up to they who are the few, we can blow them away. If we all blow in their direction, we can send a gale of wind so strong that their feet won't touch the ground. And our job, my job, is to unify enough people that one day we can do that. And that's been my life's work. I'm touched that you have appreciated it, and to all the kind words that have been spoken and indeed written. I'm not reading them all out because it's unseemly, but I'm greatly encouraged and touched by it. Thank you. Nicola Curtin says, is a hung parliament still likely or a possibility? And if Starmer requires a coalition, do you think he will go with the Greens to be in coalition with? No, he'll go with the Liberal Democrats if that is the choice that is in front of him. Rabia Burak says it's a race between Starmer and H.E. Rishi, who shines the boots of Netanyahu better. And Shug the Hoopy Doug, 1888, that means he's a Celtic supporter, says best wishes for all your fellow party members in the election. Hail from sunny Glasgow. Thanks, Shug, for that. So this is the very last chance to see the Workers' Party election broadcast for 2024. It's a poignant thought for me that I stand on the brink of my final election. I will have served at the end of this next term, if I'm elected tomorrow, for more than half of my life in Parliament. And as that includes my childhood and adolescence, that's a very significant part of my adult life. I will have spent more than half of all my life in Parliament if the good people of Rochdale return me there tomorrow. Take a last look at our party election broadcast and come back and see me on Sunday, God willing, with the mother of all talk shows. Good night. Betrayal, abandonment, disappointment. These are the prevailing emotions amongst voters in this general election. Betrayal of the working people, their living standards, where they live, where they work, or where they used to work. Take Gaza, for example. Millions of Labour voters, the great majority of Labour voters, have been horrified at the show they've been watching on their telephones, on their tablets, on their screens. Their children are even watching. Other children having their heads blown off. Other women having their limbs torn off. Other men scrambling in the rubble, trying to find at least the bodies of their loved ones. And they've looked on in horror as both British political parties supported Israel from the beginning of this genocide right up until this day. They know that these politicians are not reflecting what the public want to see. The public demand a ceasefire, but the political leaders press on regardless. In fact, Keir Starmer whipped his own MPs not to vote for it and sacked those MPs that disobeyed him. Well, the majority of people are asking, what's the point of voting for these two cheeks of the same backside if they stand for exactly the same thing? And most people want to give these two cheeks a good hard kicking. Look at the rights of working people, how they've disappeared in this country over the last 40, 50 years. Once upon a time, this country was built by and for the working class. Now it's for the bankers in the city of London, those who think work is fooling around on a computer screen. who think Swarfiga is a Balearic island. This once great industrial power of Britain is what we have to strive to bring back, with respect for the working people who built our wealth as a country in the first place. Look at the situation in the National Health Service. We've got millions of people waiting for urgently needed medical treatment, and somebody's got to pull Britain out of this death spiral. And it won't be either of the miniatures that are running for Prime Minister today. This was once a great Britain. It has to be made great again. The Workers' Party are on a barnstorming tour, the length and breadth of this country, to offer vision, hope, and to offer a little splash of colour to a dull, grey political scene. You know me, you know that I say what I mean, and I mean what I say. Give us a try, you'll see a real difference. Workers' Party, General Election 2024.